Oh, good evening and welcome to the Niall Fraser Show. Tonight is a special night tonight. It's just a hot off the back of a John Swinney press conference, so we're going to trash him relentlessly tonight. We're going to go through his life, his conference, and we're going to trash the living daylights out of John Swinney. But first, we can't start the show without our intro music, so enjoy the intro music. Let's get this place rocking. Hello and welcome to Wednesday night's Niall Fraser Show. Thank you for tuning in. I know the Rangers game's on the go, so I've got one eye on the score and one eye on the show. But thanks for joining me on Wednesday night. Rangers getting beat 2-1, by the way, at halftime. Almost went down. Almost went in at halftime, 2-0 down, but shocking. Here on Daily Express, today's paper, SNP's shame as attainment gap in Scots schools is still widening. So we'll talk about that. But the main issue, we're going to devote the whole show to this, is trashing John Swinney. We're going to trash John Swinney within an inch of his life. I've even, had a wee book. I was reading through a wee book today, and it was the Profanosaurus, the ultimate swearing dictionary. Actually, I don't think I can use many of them if I'm honest. But let's bring up our John Swinney. So what's he doing today? Well, he's in full panic mode, John Swinney. He's in full, utter panic mode. What's he doing? Let's call a press conference. Let's distract from the fact that our party's in critical decline at this point. Everyone's starting to notice this transgender ideology creeping back into our system. Not creeping back, but it's always been there. But it's creeping back into the press. And what's happening is the same thing. What are the journalists? And I know there's a lot of journalists listening to the show. What are all the journalists looking for when it comes to stories? They're looking for clicks more than anything. And there's nothing that gets more clicks than catching a politician out and making them look daft. The same thing happened with Nicola Sturgeon when she got asked the question about Adam Bryson being put in the female estate. And she got tongue twisted, she got caught up, and she got found out, and the clip probably went 1 million views. Well, the same thing is happening to John Swinney in real time. And all the journalists from now until the election are going to be asking the same question to John Swinney. They're going to be saying, hello, John, do you think a trans woman is a woman? And, he's going to go, well, I think that maybe there's a debate on that. I think maybe, when the answer is definitively no. But he can't say that. He can't say that. And I'm told in the background, John Swinney thinks like us. John Swinney, he knows he wouldn't want his wife changing alongside a man. Wouldn't he want it? Wouldn't he have it? Wouldn't he stand for it? But he'll stand on a podium that says First Minister in front of it and subject the rest of Scotland to his buffoonery and his party's buffoonery and just this, just reality denial. That's what it is. It all comes down to reality denial. And we'll get full on, John. We'll get the clip from last election, in the Westminster election. We'll see what he said about genders then.
First Minister, how many genders are there?
Well, I think there'll be quite a debate about that, Nicky. I think there are, but certainly from
what do you think?
My point of view, I recognise that. Well, I think in this debate, a woman is an adult born as a female, and they're also transgender women.
So how many?
It's all too much to bear. It's all too much to bear. Do we still have the full-on John clip somewhere? Full-on John.
Do you not accept that you'll have failed as First Minister, particularly if you're in office until 2031, like you hope, if those legally binding targets are missed?
Well, let me have a good go at it, Connor. And, you've got full-on John Swinney just now, and I'm going to do...
Is this what full-on John Swinney
This is what, believe you me, this is full-on John Swinney. And, frankly, like John Swinney's never been before. Mm-hmm. So it is full-on.
Well, his press conference today basically gave me full-on AIDS listening to, and we're going to listen to it here now in its totality, ladies and gentlemen. You've seen all the clips, all the wee 19-second, 20-second clips, the minute clips that are coming for it. Let's watch it in its totality. Pause it. Trash the man for what he is, which is a charlatan. He's a reality-denying cretin. That's what he is. So we're going to trash him within an inch of his life tonight. And see, if anyone out there will give me his location, where he's going to be, give me his diary, I will follow the man and I will heckle him. I'll get him out just like I got Hamza out. All it takes is a wee bit of heckling and they all just fall apart. They can't take it. They can't understand how unpopular they are. And we're only at 150 viewers, guys. I'm putting that to the Rangers game, but this is pathetic numbers. Share the broadcast. Get it up. Brian Moore, how long will you give him? The thing is, Brian, I think he's there for the duration. That's the thing. Depending on unless someone else happens, unless there's some sort of other scandal emerge, He will be the leader going into the Holyrood elections if and when they have a bad defeat. But I just don't see that happening at the moment, Brian, because Labour have made such a hash of it that, it's hard to see anyone winning the election except SNP. No matter, they could put a donkey up there, neighing at people, spitting on people. They could put a llama up that just spits at people, and it would still get voted in because everyone's so disenchanted by Labour. They were willing to give Labour a chance with the general election. Don't trash them, just be truthful. Believe me, I'm going to be truthful, but that will involve trashing them. So let's listen. What is John Swinney saying?
Well, good morning, everyone.
Let's get
Thank
this
you
back
very
up
much
there.
for being here this morning, and I intend to say a few words to begin with and then very much open to questions. So this is my first press conference as First Minister here in Butte House, and it comes, of course, following the successful passage of the budget yesterday, something that just a few short months ago, a fair few considered to be improbable, if not impossible. This is my first budget as First Minister, and I regard it as an important milestone in the progress of the government. Not only does Scotland have a new First Minister providing the leadership to address the issues that matter to the public, but we also have the resources agreed to...
So he's talking about, straight away, the issues that matter to the public, right? Just last week, the hottest issue in the country, the hottest issue in Scotland, is the fact that we've got an NHS nurse who served 30 years as an NHS nurse without a blemish on her record. Suddenly, she turns into some sort of aggressive transphobe because she doesn't want a man changing alongside her in the changing rooms. That's the biggest story in Scotland for the last week. It will continue to be the biggest story. And it's, John Swinney's going to get hit like question after question after question. But what I'm talking about is, he's talking about the public interest. His party and the, what do you call it? The presiding officer just shut down all sort of debate on this question. They don't want to talk about it. They can't afford to talk about it because it's a vote loser. Anybody that sees this, anybody that listens to John Swinney talk about gender will be automatically repulsed. It's one of these issues that's like it's a 90-10 issue where 90% of the people are saying, whoa, a man can't become a woman can't become a man. That's literally impossible. And we don't want men in women's changing rooms and women's sports and women's prisons. It's a farce. The whole thing's wrong. Brian, again, how long will you give him? The gender issue strikes a deep thing among... Exactly. It's not even amongst thinking Scots, Brian. It's amongst just Scots in general. When they hear the story of an NHS nurse that's been there for 30 years, 30 years as a nurse, that's a shift and a half. For her to be then sort of castigated and pulled through this media circus at the end of her career, just because she doesn't want to be changing next to a man in the changing rooms. It's a big issue, Brian. I think, again, I'll restate what I said. I think he will be there right until the Holyrood election, at the very least at the Holyrood election. Who else is it going to be? Are they going to swap him out for Kate Forbes? I don't think so. There's nobody there that can possibly take it. Brian, again, what is driving this ideology at such a senior level of Civics Scotland? Again, it's this globalist sort of transhumanist mentality. It was the same thing right across the West, where we've seen, Trump's ended it in America, but they had, Rachel Levine, they've made the generals in the army transgender. And what it does is it's destroying a country from within. Whoever it is that's putting this poison ideology into societies, and it's not just our society here in Scotland, it's all societies across the West, they seek the very destruction of that society. So it's like you couple that with mass immigration, you couple it with all these other issues, the net zero issue, you couple all these things together, it's a society destroying boulder that's crushing everyone. Evening, Glenn. Evening, Derek. Alistair was going on about Swinney as well. Yes, I watched it. It was really good. Right, so John Swinney. Let's listen to what he's actually saying.
Tackle the issues that matter to the public. Above all, to renew and to strengthen our National Health Service, to deliver on the commitments that we have made to the public in Scotland. My approach to this budget was clear. First, it must prioritise the health service, and it has. This is a budget that will make it easier for people to get appointments with their GP. It will reduce waiting times, and it will ensure people receive the care that they need when they need it. Second, it must support people in the midst of an ongoing cost of living crisis, and it does. A majority of Scots will pay less tax than if they lived in England. A winter fuel allowance has been restored for pensioners in Scotland. Extensive childcare support, measures to eradicate child poverty, free prescriptions, more affordable homes, all secured by the budget. And third, it must be a budget designed to attract maximum support, a budget that showed it was possible for parties to work together in Parliament for the benefit of the people of Scotland, and it did. Yesterday's vote demonstrated that partnership and collaboration are possible, and that is something precious, something vitally important in itself. Over the past few months, I've been working to a very simple formula. Hope plus delivery equals trust.
He's throwing it this guy's Einstein over here. E equals MC squared. Hope plus, what was it? Hope plus trust equals what? Tell me that one again.
Possible. And that is something precious, something vitally important in itself. Over the past few months, I've been working to a very simple formula. Hope plus delivery equals trust.
Hope plus delivery equals
offering
trust.
A path to greater prosperity. For example, ensuring that we make the most of our vast energy wealth so that an energy-rich Scotland also means energy-rich Scots. More jobs, better paid jobs, tangible benefits, including, above all, lower energy bills for households and businesses. Delivery. Getting our public services back on track after a decade of unprecedented knocks. Above all, rebuilding our National Health Service. And trust, because I know that there is a huge amount of anger and frustration with government, with politics, and an overwhelming desire for living standards to improve.
See, the thing is, an overwhelming anger at politics. Who's been in government all this time, John? Who's been in government all this time? Who's presided over the destruction of the NHS and our public services? They just took ScotRail back into ownership. We're taking away peak travel, blah, blah, blah. We're going to make it cheaper. Then they don't have the drivers. Then they have to cancel, almost 30% of all the services. And now the peak fares are back. And it costs 30 quid returns, to Glasgow and Edinburgh. The thing, it's unfeasible. How can he stand there and say they're delivering all this when all they've delivered this entire time has been failure after failure after failure? Hope and delivery equals trust. Fuck off, John.
Trust in governments, all governments, is at record lows. Poll numbers tell the story, but I hear it time and again in the conversations I have in all parts of the country. We've lived through some of the toughest years that any of us can remember. Standards of living have been squeezed. There is less money in people's pockets at the end of each month. It's no wonder that we are angry. No wonder we want living standards to improve. At the start of the year,
they only want living standards to improve. They only want to stop the anger because it will help them in votes. That's all. This is all, again, it's all electioneering. He doesn't actually mean anything like this. He would walk across, he'd stand over you. He would step right over you if you were dying in the street. Step right over you, bypass you. He drives past all the addicts and everything. And I said this the other day in a tweet, but he drives past just utter despair, dilapidation, destitution. He drives past it every single day on the way to work. And then I'll be like, no, we stand with the women and children and the people in the Ukraine. How about you stand for the people in Scotland, mug?
I warned that failure to pass the budget would send a signal that Parliament and politics could not deliver. That failure...
Brian, I'm sorry for swearing. But this is it's the Niall Fraser Show. I can't help but swear sometimes. I'm very sorry, but if you're going to watch it, I'm going to be swearing. I'm sorry, Brian. I'm not going to change the show for yourself, but I appreciate you pulling me up, but you know that's not me.
would only serve the interests of an increasingly extreme far right and leave devolution dangerously exposed. But the budget has passed, and a different story can be told. Our politics, our Parliament, have demonstrated that they work. Storm clouds are gathering. We can all see them. The threat from the far right is real. But that leaves me all the more convinced that working together is not only the right choice, but the only choice. That's why I want to share with you a new initiative to bring Scotland together in common cause. More unites us than divides us. That is often said. Now is the moment to make that real. By uniting behind shared values, shared standards of behaviour, and shared political norms, and unite against the rise of the far right. We must all step up. And as First Minister, I will do exactly that. My role begins by bringing people together. So I want to set out details of an initiative that will begin by bringing representatives from civic society, from our churches, our trade unions, from our charities together with the leaders of Scotland's parliamentary parties. This gathering, to be held at the end of April, 1 year before the next Scottish election, is a chance to work together for decency, democracy and respect.
What he's saying here, if you can't read through the tea leaves, ladies and gentlemen, we're all going to come together, all the Scottish Government charities, all the unions that we fund, all the folk that we control, all of these parties are going to come together and they're going to universally and unilaterally condemn reform. That's what they're going to say. They're going to brand reform as far right and tell everyone not to vote for them. And what's going to happen there? Everybody's going to vote for them. It's like, I was at the darts a few weeks ago and, the umpire, somebody's whistling at the front and he says, "Stop whistling." And what happens, ladies and gentlemen? The whole hydro just starts whistling. This is what's going to happen here. He doesn't know what he's doing.
I will extend an invitation to leaders from all the parliamentary parties and wider civic society to join me in this critical endeavour. I want us to work together to agree a common approach to asserting the values of our country, to bringing people together and creating a cohesive society where everyone feels at home. These are pivotal moments for our country and for our future. If we are to build trust in our politics, we must deliver public services that work better for the people that we serve. And the budget enables us to do so.
No shit, Sherlock.
But we must do more. It is time to come together to draw a line in the sand, to set out who we are and what we believe in. Because a politics of fear is a politics of despair. It is a politics that will divide us and destroy so much of what we hold dear. I want us to be ready for whatever this age of uncertainty throws at us, for us to be united in the face of the undoubted challenges that lie ahead. It is a mobilisation of mainstream Scotland that delivered our Parliament a quarter of a century ago. And I have no doubt it is by mobilising mainstream Scotland that we can protect those things that we care about the most, those things that are most important to all of us today.
Which is what exactly? He will not tell anybody what these values are. He won't tell anybody what these values are at all. He'll just make some blasé statement about Scottish civic values where he knows nothing. The guy's not done any civic duties in his whole life. He's been such a self-serving individual, John Swinney. He's been in government for almost over 2 decades, ladies and gentlemen. And now he's got this sort of knew he's going to stand up there and say, no, we're going to fix things after having been in government for 20 years. 20 years, ladies and gentlemen, this guy's been in government. 20 years. How many days is that? Let's get the calculator up. Oh, I brought up Outlook for some reason. I said calculator. 20 years. No, apparently my calculator doesn't know how to work. Anyway, it's got to be, 7,000 days. 7,000 odd days. And what's he done? Scotland's just went downhill time and time again. And as this paper will discuss, just how tragic the situation is in almost every facet of society. Education, opportunities for the young, the benefit system. How many people are on benefit? The fact that we've got a dwindling population and this guy seeks to enhance growth by replacing, not even replacing, just by moving in migrants for Africa and the Middle East. That's going to fix Scotland, John. That's what's going to fix Scotland. I don't think so. And he's got the cheek to talk about values.
So thank you very much, and we'll now move on to some questions, and we'll just work through the list that we've got here, and I'll come first of all to Colin Mackay.
So this is where we're going to get to the hot stuff, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to get to the questions. The questions today were actually pretty good. So the questions, and again, this is where all the clips have come from. And you'll see, it's as soon as you say, we'll go to the press, everybody will be sitting on the edge of their seat, hoping they'd be first to ask. They'll be, John, do you think it's right that a man can go into a women's changing room or to force women to change next to a man? You think that's right? They'll all be dying to be first to ask that question, because whoever asks that question gets the clicks. All the journalists, whoever asks that question, whoever puts them on his toes the most will get the clicks.
Colin.
Question on what you're saying just now. Are you talking about reform, the rise of reform?
Of course, yes.
Who are taking votes from all parties in council by-elections across the country. And when you talk about the politics of fear and despair, they're talking about the politics of frustration. But secondly, are you concerned at what the Prime Minister is doing about cutting international developments?
Well, it's Colin Mackay, right? For all, yeah, I actually think he's quite a decent journalist, Colin Mackay. You know, of course he's talking about reform. Let's go back and listen to it again, right? But we'll pause it at the right moment this time.
It's from all parties.
There we go.
Through the list that we've got here, and I'll come first of all to Colin Mackay. Colin.
Question on what you're saying just now. Are you talking about reform, the rise of reform, who are taking votes from all parties in council by-elections across the country?
There you go. That's the point, right? Reform voters, the Reform Party, they're taking votes from every single party in Holyrood. Every single party. And this is what they hate. They hate it. They want this sort of amalgamous mesh where they're all got the same politics. They all believe in the transgender woo-woo shit. They all believe in more immigration. They all believe in that. They didn't want people for the outside, but actual working class entering politics. This is what reform's about. Reform, for all it's all the bad press about it, for all this it's niggles. The reform vote is the working class vote. It used to be the Tories. Somewhere along this time, the working class vote, it's shifted, or the working class parties, whoever's supposed to represent the working class the most. It isn't Keir Starmer. It isn't John Swinney. It isn't Anas Sarwar. Is it? Fuck. And it's certainly no Boris Johnson. And it certainly wasn't Rishi Sunak. So over time, the working class vote has shifted dramatically from Labour, who used to run rampant across Scotland. It shifted to the SNP, where they actually had loads of working class candidates, albeit they were idiots. People like Mary Black, people like Stephen Flynn. They're all idiots, although I think they're actually working class. But then we've got these ghouls. You know, Anna Sarwar, privately educated. Hamza Yusuf, privately educated. Pretending to be working class warriors. Away in raffle. They don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what it's like to live on the bottom rung of society. They don't know what it's like. They don't know what it's like to climb the rungs of society and then maybe have a bump and go back down. They don't know. They've not got a clue. So when Colin Mackay asks the question, you know, you're talking about Reform are taking votes off every party. Why is he convening a summit? Because this summit is going to include every party. It's going to, the Greens will be there, Labour will be there, the Lib Dems will be there. The Tories, I don't think, will go, because they're actually trying to, take the mantle of reform. So they've got all these parties there that are standing shoulder to shoulder, hand in hand, saying, oh, we don't want the far right here in Scotland. Oh, it's a far right fascist party. They're coming to disrupt our party. They've got the politics of division is a dark cloud over Scotland. When the only thing they care about is that Reform's taking votes for them. They don't care about the people. They don't care about any of the issues that here in Scotland. You know, I've been doing week after week after fucking week. I've been doing to that addiction clinic, the safe consumption room, and right across the road in the Morrison's car park, there's hundreds of needles. We were picking them up last week. It's an ongoing public health emergency, and these cunts couldn't give a shit. And yet they talk about civic values. Honestly, it gets my goat up that they're so wrong. They're such naked charlatans. Naked charlatans. They've got they've got no shame. And they're going to link arms, they're going to come together and condemn reform with the hopes that it's going to diminish their vote share. But the thing is, they're going to go there, they're going to link arms, they're going to sing Kumbaya, migrants welcome, and what's going to happen is more people are going to vote reform as a result of these clowns, which, I welcome it. They're such idiots. Just shut up. The thing is, he can't shut up. Why pull a press conference to talk about this? Why? It makes no sense. It's going to backfire on him. It doesn't make any sense, ladies and gentlemen. Make it make sense, ladies and gentlemen. Make it make sense. It's, I just, for the life of me, what's this guy doing? It makes no sense for them to pull these antics in these press conferences. And the thing is, he just gets ripped apart in the questions. You know what I mean? What are you condemning all the people who voted reform in the last general election? Are you saying them all far right, John? That's a question that comes up. And he just goes on a big, huge waffle again, because it can't justify what he's even saying.
And when you talk about the politics of fear and despair, they're talking about the politics of frustration.
Again, absolutely. Colin Mackay on stellar form here. Stellar form. You talk about the politics of fear and division. They talk about the politics of frustration. And I can even sense the frustration in Colin Mackay's voice right then and there. Like, Colin Mackay seems to be defending reform, even if he doesn't understand why he is. It's the frustratingness of the Scottish politics in general is what makes people just say, oh, I'm not voting at all. You wonder why we've got such horrendous rates of votes here in Scotland. It's just shocking. People are so disenchanted with the politics in Scotland. It's worse than the politics right across the UK. It's terrible. I can't, but he's asking, this is the frustration thing. The reform they're going to absorb all the people who have seen this this charade, this fake circus that goes on in Scotland every Thursday at First Minister's Questions, with the scripted questions, the scripted answers, and we all just toil on. Well, all these people just get rich. They all take huge, big, it makes me sick. And they're all deviants. Of course they are. We've done a big, massive show about the SNP, the Scottish Nons Party. They've got so many sexual deviants in that party, it's actually hard to remember them all. And by the time you get round to naming them all, there's more appear. And it'll be the same in Labour, and it'll be the same. And, I didn't even want to go into the Greens. I think they've probably got 100% deviancy rate in the Greens. Right.
But secondly, are you concerned at what the Prime Minister is doing about cutting international development spending to invest in defence spending, and what that could mean, for example, for jobs in East Kilbride?
On the first part of your question, Colin, I am very concerned about the rise of far-right politics. And I want to use my office as First Minister to work with other parliamentary parties who...
Reform?
Pardon?
Does that mean reform?
Yes, of course it does, yes.
Of course it does. But he'll not say that. It's just, the only reason that he's afraid of far-right parties... And remember how the SNP was formed in the first place, ladies and gentlemen. And the SNP are fascists. That's what they are. They're reality-denying fascists. Same with the Greens. And they want to impose this fakery on Scotland. Flying in the face of all public opinion, flying in the face of everything that's holy, flying in the face of the land of enlightenment itself. Just tarnishing Scotland, driving it right into the ground, destroying opportunities, destroying jobs, and then standing on a podium and saying that we're protecting jobs, that we're creating jobs, that Scotland's just doing fantastic, our NHS is crumbling. Well, they're in government the entire time. This guy's been in government 20 years. No, they stand there, they spout shite. It just makes me so angry. All the while, the lives of ordinary Scots are getting worse and worse. The lives of our children and their education is getting worse and worse. They're subjected to drag queen story time in Dundee. It was at the weekend there, and I'm saying the drag queen story time shit. That's 99.9% for the drag queen. It's for their gratification. Why are we giving money to these fetishists? Why are we doing this? Why are we sending buses and nursery kids to see a drag queen when it's all for the drag queen? It's not for the kids. It was never for the kids. The whole thing's such a big joke. And they'll stand there and say, oh, yeah, everything's sunshine and rainbows, kumbaya.
Yes, of course it does, Colin. And I want to work with other political parties to set out clearly and boldly to the public what we can agree on as the norms and the values of our society and how we can protect those, because I think they are under threat. I think they're under very, very vigorous threat.
What is it possible? What is it? What is it that reform is offering? What is it that reform is promising that somehow is misaligned with Scottish values? I would like him to answer that question. What is it? What do you think that reform is saying that is out of touch and out of sync with Scottish civic society and out of sync with Scottish values? What does that even mean? What is it? Could you tell me in the comments, what the hell is he talking about here? And how dare he desperately try and cast aspersions on reform as if they've got values anything other than aligned with the Scottish, Scottish politics and Scottish values. How dare he say things like that? These are Scottish people voting for them. So, ipso facto, this is Scottish values. He's so, tell me, what is it that he's suggesting that reform are promising something that misaligns and is out of sync with Scottish society? What is it that he thinks that's the main bone of contention here? Is it immigration? Is it net zero? Is it the end to this rainbow mockery in our schools? Is it back to a knowledge-based education, John? Is that out of sync? Is that out of sync with Scottish values? Wanting your child to have a good education? Is it out of sync with Scottish values if you want oil and gas drilled and you want opportunities in the North Sea and across, that you didn't want Grangemouth to shut? Is that against Scottish values, John? Is having opportunities and futures against Scottish values, John? Is no being flooded with endless amounts of migrants? Is not wanting that for your children to grow up in? Is that somehow not Scottish values, John? What is it? I don't understand what he's actually getting at here and what he's trying to suggest.
From the politics of Farage. And I think there are clearly differences of opinion between myself and other political parties. Of course there are. But there is an overwhelming underpinning of common ground about the values that we hold dear about our politics and our society. So
this is the thing. He's talking about the other parties there. He's talking about Labour and Lib Dems. Oh, there's an underpinning. There's a quiet understanding that all we do is nothing. That we don't do anything. We don't do anything radical. We don't upset the boat. We don't rock the boat. Full steam, John. Full steam ahead, John. What is it? Tell us. Not what he's saying, the quiet part out loud here, that all the other parties are working together to stop the rise of reform. Because it's going to affect all the other parties. Labour are going to lose voters to reform. The SNP are going to lose voters to reform. Lib Dems are going to lose voters to reform. The Greens are going to lose voters to reform. The Tories are going to lose voters to reform. They just don't want another party in the mix that is going to call them out. They just don't want it. Norma here saying hiya. Hiya, Norma. You've caught me mid rant. You've actually stopped me. So we'll see what John Swinney said.
Want to give the leadership to bring people in Scotland together, not just in a parliamentary sense, but in a civic sense, to make our presence.
And he's got such a cheek to talk about unity and unification when his party is all about division. And it always has been about division. Always has been, always will be. He's got, it's just such a naked charlatan standing up there. And it looks like he's getting flushed. Like, is he not embarrassed saying this stuff?
Felt in protecting the values of our country. And then in relation to your point about the Prime Minister's decision, I understand the Prime Minister's, the importance the Prime Minister attaches to increasing expenditure to ensure that we can deal with the threats that we face as a society. And but I think the choices that have been made about slashing international aid are the wrong choices. I think they are short-sighted, because I think if we go back to the foundations of the principles of international aid, the principles of international aid are about trying to address some of the fundamental issues about inequality within our world, which if we don't address them through international development aid, these issues will come back to be a challenge and a difficulty for us.
He says that as Trump has slashed US aid, and it's had a knock-on effect on Stonewall, which has in turn affected people in Stonewall and affected him, because they're Stonewall zealots. If you don't know what Stonewall is, it's like this rainbow Nazi league of fascists that want to put men and women's sports everywhere, that want to, just will change the entire biological system, and will just lie to your kids straight up and say there's thousands of genders, making your kid confused.
And that's exactly why I think the choices been made are their own choices about where the money is coming from. I'll come to Lindsay Buse now from the BBC. Lindsay.
Thank you, First Minister. Are you suggesting that the tens of thousands of Scottish people who voted for Reform UK in the general election and maybe considering voting for Reform UK in the next Scottish election could be characterised as being far right?
Fantastic question. Fantastic question, isn't it, ladies? How's he going to escape that one? He's going to have to pull a Houdini to get out of that one. It's just, to cast aspersions on tens of thousands of voters like that, it's just shocking.
And secondly, just to follow up on the aid question, the cut to the aid budget, are you concerned that other areas of public spending could be squeezed to pay for that increase in defence spending, as was suggested could be the case by the IFS?
On your first point, Lindsay, I said in my comments that I accept and understand that people are angry. I don't in any way try to say that there isn't anger in our society. I think what worries me is that some of the response to that anger is to find attractiveness in the politics of Farage and the far right. And I think that's the wrong choice. And I'm simply making the point.
Talks about anger. Who's caused the anger, John? Who's caused the anger? It's him. It's the SNP. It's them that's caused the anger, and now they're upset that people are voting out with normal voting blocks.
Today, that it's important that those of us who are repulsed by the politics of Farage and the far right come together to give the leadership and stress the importance of the values that we hold dear about our society, and to essentially create a political culture or reinforce a political culture about the fundamental importance of democratic, civic and inclusive values which are at the heart of the Scotland we live in today, and which
It's just, again, to sort of say that Reform voters, the Reform themselves, don't align with normal civic values is just wrong. It's just entirely wrong. But he'll just continue with this fake line, this fake narrative. Yeah, he's going to take he's going to take a tumble for this. This will not serve him any favours doing this press conference at all.
which has been hard won over many, many years of collaboration involving many of the political parties that I have cited. So I think there's an opportunity for us to give vent to an alternative to the far right and to address the anger that people feel in our society. And I accept that responsibility.
They're not even far right. I mean, let's deconstruct that as well. The thing is, the Parliament is so full. This I'm talking about the Scottish Parliament here. They're so full, they're all far left. They're all far left communist Marxists. You've got Ross Greer, Patrick Harvey, John Swinney. They're far left. We're not talking about the far right here. They're on the right side of politics, but they're not far right. It's not far right to call for deportations. It's not. It's common sense to call for deportations. It's common sense to start getting the energy that's out from under our feet. Do you want to have expensive energy bills all this time? They talk about all these renewable energies. Have your bills reduced? Have your bills come down? You can't drive about in Scotland without seeing hundreds of these windmills We should have free energy with the amount of windmills that's up here. We don't. In fact, it's gotten more expensive. So what's going on? It's not far right to demand that we see a reduction in energy bills, especially when we're ploughing ahead with all these renewable projects that are so inefficient that we can't even bring our bills down. We need to make it easier for people to live. You wonder why, he'll go on to talk about migration, surely. We need more migrants. You can't have a speech without saying we need more migrants. What would be better would be not to have any migrants at all, and just make it easier for people to meet, for people to have families. But it's all down to economics. They need a house to live in that's theirs. That's not happening either. The price of houses is going up. It's spiraling out of control. Inflation's spiraling out of control. These people are fine because they're getting above inflation pay rises. They're all fine. But the people, again, on the lowest rung of society are getting hammered time again, time and time again. And a lot of people are turning to drugs, they're turning to alcohol, and they're committing suicide directly because of the actions of the Scottish Government and the UK Government.
Me, as First Minister and leading the Scottish Government, that I've got to address that by the practical measures that I bring forward as First Minister and to deliver on people's expectations. So that's the first point. On the second point, I think obviously we're in an incredibly challenging position on public expenditure, and we have just passed a budget in which we have faced up to some of those hard choices, and I know the United Kingdom Government is doing exactly the same. But I think we've got to be very careful about those choices for all the reasons that I set out to Colin. The international development aid is an investment in a more peaceful world. It is an investment in tackling inequality in the world, which can fuel.
Charity starts at home, ladies and gentlemen. You ever heard that one? You ever heard your old granny say that? Charity starts at home. If we can't look after the people in Scotland, then we don't have enough money to send elsewhere. Simple as. Until there is not one homeless person sleeping rough. That isn't choosing to sleep rough. We've got all these different factors. Until there's not one addict that isn't cared for, and until we've not got one addict that isn't a rehab bed available to that addict. Charity starts at home, ladies and gentlemen. How dare we send money abroad when we've got all these issues here? How dare we? But no, and according to him, it's a good thing. According to him, it's a good thing. Charity doesn't start at home for John Swinney. It starts abroad.
The very same anger that I've talked about that exists in some parts of Scottish society today. So I think we have to recognise that challenge and address it. But I am worried that there may be further public expenditure implications that might have an effect on the spending review, which is being addressed by the United Kingdom Government as we speak. We expect that to be concluded towards the summer, and obviously the spending review will be significantly influenced, I would imagine, by some of the comments the Prime Minister made yesterday. Can I now come to Matty Sutton from ITV Border? Matty.
Thank you, First Minister. You've said people have lived through tough times and there's less money. In Dumfries and Galloway Council tomorrow, they're expected to raise council tax by up to 9%. The borders have already gone up by 10%. Do you accept that's adding pressure to people and, making them angry as well? And just on the defence.
Another great question. It's getting really tough on the bottom rungs. It's getting really tough for people out there in Scotland, John saying. Well, councils right across the land, a lot of them SNP-controlled councils, they're above inflation rises in council tax. And they're getting less services for it. Your bins are getting taken out every 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And your council tax going up. The roads are a lot of shit. You're driving about on broken roads. Your car is getting demolished by having to drive on these roads. Price of everything's going up. council tax is going up, there's less opportunities, your wages aren't going up. But it's, you know, this is coming from the party. Remember remember SNP's motto. I'll see if I can bring it up. We'll scrap the unfair council tax. It's time. It's time. It's time. Let's scrap the unfair council tax. What is going on? What is going on? What's Derek Hart saying? Migrants getting better treatment than any British person who's born and brought up here, living in hotels, getting free travel, free PlayStations, free medical care, etc. Exactly. Charity starts at home, but we're bringing people here. We're getting, and this is, you know, he talks about anger. If there's anything more anger-inducing than putting migrants in hotels up and down Scotland that get paid more than you, they get 3 square meals a day, as you're struggling away, and you're paying for it. If there was anything more anger-inducing, that's it. But let's see what the follow-up question is.
Increases. Do you agree ultimately with the Prime Minister's decision to raise defence spending, and are you worried about security given the geopolitical situation at the moment?
On your first point, Matty, on the council tax, the government, I'm obviously concerned by significant council tax increases. I responded to a question from one of your colleagues during the course of the last few weeks where I said that, I think it was Alistair Grant actually, where I said that I thought single-digit council tax increases were what we should anticipate or expect. So obviously, you know, if they're higher than that, then I'm concerned about those.
So he wanted people, he wanted councils to raise tax by 9%. Then, as soon as they go double digits, oh no,
increases. The government has done its bit. Local government asked us for a real terms increase in the core local government settlement, and we gave that. We've increased local authority funding by £1 billion. But I do acknowledge that there are real challenges in the delivery of public services. I've had to respond to that by the investment we're making in a variety of public services, whether that's the health service or in relation to the funding for local government or other public services. So there are challenges because of inflation and other factors. One of the issues which I think is fueling the council tax increases is the implications of employers' national insurance contribution increases. And I think if you look at the kind of calculation of the impact of that, I think it would be reasonable to say that probably 3 to 4% of council tax increases are a product of the employer's national insurance contribution increases. And even then, I'm not sure that will mitigate all of the impact of those of the employer's national insurance contribution increases, because that will then have, you know, there'll be effects on, let's for example say, social care providers who are not getting compensation for the increase in costs. I think all of these things come together to fuel the increases that are being experienced. On your second point in relation to defence expenditure, I do think it is necessary to take seriously the threat of security, which therefore leads to the conclusion that we need to spend more on defence. I think there are obviously choices to be made. You know, the United Kingdom is spending billions of pounds every year on servicing the Trident nuclear missile system. As a party, as a government, I don't support, as an individual, I don't support the possession of nuclear weapons. There's obviously resources that could be spent alternatively on defence than being spent on Trident missiles, which are.
So we'll scrap the ultimate deterrent and just have ground soldiers.
Not actually stopping conflict in the world today, and they're not able to be deployed in the current challenges that we face. So I think there's a lot of issues that we have to wrestle with as part of the discussion about defence. But fundamentally, on your core point, am I concerned about security? Do I believe we need to be more take a stronger position in relation to our security? Yes, I do, because of the threats that we face. Okay, David Wallace-Lockhart from BBC Network. David.
Thank you, First Minister. On your first general point in your speech about the threat of the far right, just for anyone who perhaps might be attracted by the message of reform in Scotland, could you spell out to them what exactly you think makes this party far right? And secondly, is the SNP traditionally has been a party that doesn't champion the idea of spending more on our military, spending more on defence. What is it about the current situation Europe faces that has led you to, as leader of the SNP, be saying it's time to spend more on defence?
I think there's actually a link between the 2 points that you've put to me, David. One is the fact, and I think it's inherent in the nature of the threat that we face to our security. There is a very live and active threat to our security from the aggression of Russia. And I think Farage is, an accomplice to the Russian agenda.
Now, that's the statement that'll get a lot of headlines. An accomplice. So, and again, I tweeted it earlier on. This guy, this charlatan, this naked charlatan, he can identify a Russian accomplice, but he can't identify what a woman is and what a man is. Ipso facto, nothing he's saying here, how can we take any credence that any of it is real? How can we believe a single word that comes out of this man's mouth when we can't get over the simple fact of what a man and a woman is? We can't get over it. How everything after that fact is null and void. I said it before. I keep going back to the Rutherglen by-election. The Rutherglen by-election, what my closing statement at the Rutherglen by-election, I had the SNP candidate on my right and the Green candidate on my left, right, I don't really care, I can't remember. And he says, if we can't defeat this simple lie, then how can we even talk about anything that's got a minutia, a scintilla of detail? How can we ever talk about someone that requires detail, thought, and intellect when we can't get over the basics? We can't get the basics right. But our children don't know what toilet to go in. Make it make sense. Make it make sense.
An apologist for the Russian agenda. So, to anybody.
And by the way, just for a wee bit of sort of background, this war against Russia has been going on for decades. NATO have been encroaching on Russia closer and closer and closer and closer and closer until Russia had to do something about it. They said they wouldn't move an inch towards Russia, and they just kept inching their way towards them. So it's NATO's doing. Russia are just responding to this.
Who in this country, who thinks that Farage represents a means of protecting this country from the external threats that we face, I would say have a good close look at what Farage has been connected with and what his MPs are saying about the Russian threat and their trivialization of the Russian threat. So that is why
What about our threat to Russia? Surely they're feeling threatened. You know what I mean? We need to back off this for a while and just say, whoa. And at least now we've got a real leader in charge in Trump that's actually trying to orchestrate a peace deal. We might even do, on the Friday night, we might do a live peace deal type situation. Vladimir Putin's offering 2 million tons of aluminium. So that's one bit on the peace deal. The USA are looking for mineral rights under Ukraine. That's what they want. So we've got mineral rights on one side of the peace deal. We've got aluminium on the other side of the peace deal. Ukraine's getting carved up here. Things are happening. So we might just do a live peace deal talk and just say what is actually on the table here. What deal can we expect to see? But we need a deal. There's millions of people died in this war, John. There's 60,000 people missing. If you feel so hard about it, go and fight yourself, John. But again, it's all rhetoric for this guy. He's a naked charlatan.
I come to the conclusions that I come to, that we face a very real threat, that if we don't get it right by protecting Ukraine, by protecting the territorial integrity and independence and freedom of Ukraine.
There we go again. Derek Hart with the knowledge. Nothing but hypocrites. Alex Salmond had a show on RT for years. For years. When I was in George Galloway's party, George Galloway had a show on RT. I went down to London and I was in the RT studios, right across the road for MI5. And the guy that was working in the office says, "Oh, well done. That'll be you on a watch list." I've only entered a studio, for crying out loud. What the hell's wrong with me? Not, again, they'll just bypass all this. They'll bypass it all. Nothing but hypocrites, Derek. You're right.
Then I think we will rue the day. So that's why we have to take that position, and that's why I would say to people in Scotland, that's one of the reasons I would say to people in Scotland who might be attracted by the simplicity of the Farage message, that they should look very, very closely at the small print of what that involves. And the other thing I would say is that it is crystal clear. Farage has been for years leading the argument which has been hostile to migration. And
fantastic. Well done to Farage for that then. Well done. Because mass migration has destroyed England. It's destroying Scotland. We've got, we'll bring up the maps of the migrant hotels. We'll bring up a map. Here we go. There's the migrant hotels there. It's destroying Glasgow. We'll go into this. We'll go to the paper there. We've got all the crime stats. Crime's on the rise. Even though John Swinney will tell you otherwise, crime is on the rise. Rapes are on the rise. I'm not putting it all squarely at the migration, no. But I would say it's in part down to that as well. Greenock, Erskine, Paisley, Glasgow, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. East Kilbride, Bathgate, Edinburgh, Falkirk, Perth, Dundee, up the road to Aberdeen. 4 migrant hotels. We're right to be against migration. It's all right if people are coming in to live here and work, if they come in and they're contributing to society, but they're not. We're putting them up in hotels and just in some sort of weird hope that they'll eventually turn into, contributing citizens. No, it's not going to work like that, John. So I'm glad that Farage has been on the forefront of this anti-migration sentiment. Thank God, someone is.
I think that it is. It's based on a fundamentally racist view of the world. I reject that. I think.
What's racist about it, John? What's racist about it? What's racist about no wanting migrants into our country that's going to take away the positions that Scots have got, take away the opportunities that we've got? And why is it? We didn't want our culture diluted and just lost to the annals of time because of your mistakes. There's nothing racist about that at all.
I think migration is an advantage for Scotland.
It's not an advantage. Sorry, I keep pausing it. I'll just talk over them.
We have a reducing working age population. We need to attract more working age people to come to live and to work and to contribute in our country. And that's an economic necessity.
It's not an economic necessity. There's a million and one other ways to counteract what he's talking about. We've got a declining population. That's your fault, John. You've been in government 2 decades. What have you done? What have you done? Nothing. You've not made it easier to have families. I keep going back to like my own family. My gran was the youngest of 10. 5 boys and 5 girls. We don't have families like that anymore. That used to be the norm that you'd have 5, 6, 7 kids. But it's the economic uncertainty. It's the fact that people can't afford anything, John. We're just creating renters for life because of you, because of your party, because of this push for migration over and over and over again. It only serves the multinational companies who want to keep wages as low as humanly possible. It's not an economic necessity. It's far from it.
For us, and the Farages would essentially rail against that and undertake significant damage to our society if they were able to prevail. So it's for those reasons I take that view.
What's the damage to our society? What damage could we possibly pose by reducing migration? That we didn't meet our 0.1% growth rate. We don't meet the paltry growth rate that we're supposed to meet. It's a lot of shite. They hide behind economic arguments.
I'll now come to Gina Davidson. Gina.
That aren't even correct, by the way.
Thank you, First Minister. Can I ask, the anger and frustration you talk about that is being felt by voters, your party's been in power in Scotland for 18 years.
Brilliant.
How much responsibility do you feel that you need to take for that situation?
It'll be none, by the way.
And can I also ask, there's a vote in Parliament from the Scottish Greens asking for all government funding to armed companies in Scotland to end. Now, they're talking about Gaza, but will your party support that today or not?
On that point, obviously there's a government amendment that's being put forward. We'll see what the Parliament's obviously got to debate that this afternoon, but we do not enable Scottish enterprise, who are the sort of focal point of the point in the Green motion today. We do not allow Scottish enterprise to fund the manufacture of munitions, and there's an extensive due diligence undertaken by Scottish enterprise about any economic development funding that is made available to any company involved in any form of defence activity. So those checks and those stringent processes are applied in all circumstances. And that will obviously be at the heart of the government's proposal that's put to Parliament today. But as we all know, the government does not operate with a majority, so we'll have to wait and see what Parliament makes of the different proposals that it has in front of it this afternoon. On your first point, Gina, I accept. I'm standing here accepting that we've been in office for a long time. I've been very influential in government activity. I have the enormous privilege of being First Minister, and I recognise that there is anger in our society. People's living standards have been under acute pressure. It's been a really tough time for people. The combination of austerity.
He's
Brexit,
such a polished politician, isn't he? He's so polished. This guy has been moulded from decades of slippery talking. He's been carved out of sheer politics. This guy has been manufactured through politics. You can tell in the way that he speaks. He doesn't mean anything that he's saying. It's all the same talk. I hear it all the time. When I was, again, I'll go back to the hustings, but, somebody asks a question and immediately, what a great question you've asked. What a great question. And just instead of just answering it, they like to pander to people all the time.
It's been an absolute ongoing perfect storm for years. At the same time, much has been achieved. So, for example, people are getting a much stronger early learning and childcare offer today, despite the effects of austerity.
The early learning and childcare being a drag queen,
in our public assets in the country, in our transport infrastructure, in housing.
Transport and infrastructure. We've no dual to A9. You've been promising it for years now. Fergus Ewan's having an apoplectic fit because you've promised and didn't deliver. Yeah, the services are in the bin.
We've got data which demonstrates that Scotland alone, as a country within the United Kingdom, is likely to experience a decline in child poverty levels compared to increases in other parts of the United Kingdom. So,
why is that? Why is that? Why is it? Is it because other parts of the United Kingdom are overloaded with migrants? They can't cope. Poverty sets in. We are not as nearly overwhelmed, but that's coming, ladies and gentlemen.
I understand the anger, and I accept that I've got to address that and to own that, and that's what I'm here to do. It's what I'm about in taking forward my office as First Minister. But also would say to people there are significant achievements that have been made in the face of that climate, that perfect storm of austerity, Brexit, cost of living, inflation spikes, COVID, and all that's gone with it, which has put enormous strain on individuals within our society, an enormous strain.
And they all went along with the COVID sham, the COVID scam, didn't they?
I'll come to Niall Pooran now. Neil.
Thanks, First Minister. I was wondering what you think comes next in terms of your push for Scottish independence. When, for example, will the independence prospectus paper series be concluded? And you spoke earlier about bringing different parties and civic society together. Is the fact that you lead a pro-independence party not a bit of a barrier to trying to build that consensus if you're going to have to work with pro-union parties in terms of this initiative to tackle the far right?
I don't think so, Neil, because yesterday demonstrates that we can do that. Yesterday,
the budget went through, and the Greens supported us, and Labour abstained, and we got through. Why is Labour abstaining on this as well? It makes no sense. I mean, just vote, for crying out loud.
Let me take this opportunity to say something I've said on other occasions, but I'm very happy to say again, I very much welcome the collaborative approach taken by the Liberal Democrats and by the Greens and by Alapa in the budget vote yesterday, in which the government budget passed with 73 votes behind it. And governments, that's an illustration of the fact that we've been able to reach across the constitutional divide within Scottish society to create a focus on delivering for the public in Scotland. In all honesty, I don't really think the Labour Party had a particularly strong argument yesterday about why they weren't supporting the budget, but I'll leave that to them to explain. So I think there's very clear evidence that we can reach across the constitutional issues within Scotland to create unity and cohesion. But the point I'm making, Neil, is a deeper point about the democratic and civic values of our country and who we are and what we are about. And although I may have different...
He's talking about all these values and democratic values when he seeks to demolish a party that is going to be voted in democratically to unite people against it. If people are voting for it, therefore it's democratic. So what's the point? I mean, what's the point he's making here? I don't understand.
Opinions about individual policies with other political parties. I accept fundamentally that there's an underpinning of attitude amongst those political parties that I've always encountered, I've always rubbed up against, I've always been able to engage in, which has given me confidence that our society had the advantage of that cohesion underpinning our politics. And I worry about where we might be in the forthcoming period with the presence of Farage, etc. in our
Here we go.
politics. So that's why I think it's really important that we do this, regardless of our different opinions on the Constitution. And in relation to the question of independence, I've set out before that, you know, I've got to make sure that an argument is made to the people of Scotland about why Scotland would be in a better position if we were an independent country, and why we'd be able to tackle more of the challenges that we face more effectively if we had the powers of independence. That's my job, to make sure I take that forward. That's what we'll be doing in the period going forward. It's what I do all the time, to make sure that people understand that there is an alternative to the current arrangements. I'll make the current arrangements work as effectively to the maximum I possibly can do. And I think yesterday's budget is a demonstration of that. But there are other prospects that are available to us, and I want to make that case for independence, and will do so. Right, we'll come on now to the print colleagues, and I'm going to come first of all to Michael Blackley. Michael.
Are there circumstances where you would support trans members of staff accessing? Here
we're getting to the main gotcha clip. You know, I'm surprised that the journalist before him didn't mine this rich vein.
Female-only changing rooms in Scottish Government buildings, in Scottish Government agencies and other parts of the public sector?
Well, all of these questions are carefully calibrated by the requirements of legislation. So in all of the approach to answering that question, Michael, there has to be the law has to be followed, and the law is quite clear that there must be single-sex spaces available within our estate. So that's what the law says and requires of us, and that has to be the case. Now, there are, of course, arrangements in the Equalities Act which address the issues that have to be taken into account by any employer in dealing with any desire from a trans person to use those single-sex spaces, and exemptions that can be deployed if the employer goes through the necessary process of considering the implications of that fact for other members of staff. So I think the key thing here is, and I've made this point on a number of occasions, that the rule of law is the crucial point here, and all organisations must act consistently with the law, and that's what I would expect to be the case in all circumstances. Can I now come to Chris McCall? Chris.
Thank you, First Minister. On the issue of Trident and defence spending, do you believe the UK government should be diverted?
The situation we find ourselves in now.
To prevent reform becoming. You've talked about the way that the budget shows how partnership and collaboration works across parties and across the constitutional divide. How do you imagine that applying, first of all, in the run-up to the Holyrood elections, in the campaign, how it's conducted next year, and also how that might apply post-results in terms of working with other parties to prevent reform becoming kingmaker?
I think I can't tell you how pleased I am that we were able to attract support from beyond the SNP. One of the things I said to Shona Robertson when we started out on the budget journey several months ago, one of my hopes, what I was directing her to try to achieve, was that we could get other people to vote for the budget.
Come on.
I didn't want the budget to limp through on kind of the neutrality of abstentionism. That wasn't what
that's what happened,
I
basically.
wanted us to use the budget to try to reshape parliamentary politics. And the fact
it's honestly, it's so galling to listen to them. I'm getting dumber by the second. I'm so bored. I'm so bored listening to this. I'm almost falling asleep. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen. I'm falling asleep listening to this guy. We've got another gotcha question here about trans.
and we've compromised.
Come
Good
on.
one budget process.
Come on.
Wider Scotland.
Come
The
on.
next Holyrood election to lock out reform. I mean, polls suggest they're currently on course for a dozen MSPs, perhaps 15 MSPs. They could be a force to be reckoned with in that next parliament. Could there be some kind of deal between yourself, Labour, other parties in order to lock out reform?
I don't favour electoral pacts.
But
what I favour is parties that share the same.
Oh my God! Here we go again.
Civic values working together.
The civic values that he's talking about is you have to be on board with mass migration. It's got to be what he's saying here. Beneath the surface, that's what he's saying. You have to be on board with the rainbow agenda. You have to be. I know I'm losing browsing cookies listening to that. You know, I'm actually, I'm getting so sick of this guy. What's the underlying current, underlying civic values that it's talking about? And you must be for this rainbow agenda. You must be for mass migration, and you must be against oil and gas. You must be on the net zero scam, like us. You must be involved in all three scams. You must be involved in the rainbow scam, the sex change scam. You must be involved in the mass migration scam, and you must be involved in the net zero scam. That's apparently what Scottish civic values is to John Swinney.
To marginalise that far-right sentiment and to address the issues.
It's a common sense sentiment, John.
Fuel that sentiment. So the budget yesterday, to me,
blah blah blah,
that resulted far right, and I think that's our
poverty-related attainment gap failing to shrink and massive council tax hikes. You were also involved, despite the discussions of unity today, in one of the most heavily divisive referendums in Scotland's history. Your critics will say that this is you blaming your own problems on your own bogeyman ahead of the next election.
Exactly. Well done.
The SNP are the problem and not the solution.
Ha ha. Ha ha.
I think you've got to look at a number of things in answering that question, Connor. The first is that the SNP won the election in 2007, again in 2011, 2016, 2020, 2021. So 4 elections. So the public have been asked this question, and they've given us strong levels of electoral support in the Scottish parliamentary elections, and obviously.
No, this is the thing. It's so annoying in Scotland, but the cruise by on 30% of the vote, and that gets them in every time because we're all just, nobody feels like they want to vote for Labour. Nobody feels like they want to vote for the Tories, especially in any big numbers. So what happens? SNP coasting on 30% every time, honestly.
Funding the in England.
Let's get to the trans stuff.
Very difficult issues, and I accept problems.
Good morning, First Minister. You'll be aware, of course, that Keir Starmer is heading over to the US today to meet with President Trump. So given what you've said today about the far right, what is the message that the Prime Minister should be taking to the White House?
Well, the Prime Minister needs to...
Why are we asking him that? It's not for him to answer. He's just a glorified mayor. Honestly, just leave him alone.
Countries can decide.
I just wonder if you support that policy, that Scottish Government policy.
In his dialogue in the United States. Can I come to Simon Johnson, please, Simon?
Thank you, First Minister. Just following up on Michael's question, the guidance for Scottish Government staff states, quote, trans staff should choose to use the facilities they feel most comfortable with.
Which is always the other sex's toilet.
For them to have changed their legal gender or to have undergone gender reassignment. I just wonder if you support that policy, that Scottish Government policy. And just for the sake of clarity, given all the debate about this that's going on at the moment, is it your position that trans women are women?
Well, I've said the answer I've given.
Honestly, no. Everyone behind the screen is screaming, no.
And
no, please, no.
Of course, I support the guidance that's available, but it's underpinned also by the need to ensure that any such question does not come at the disadvantage of other members of staff, and that's a crucial obligation, which is in law, which the government as an employer has got to make sure is provided for within our estate.
if they didn't further this trans nonsense, we wouldn't be in this situation. We wouldn't have to field questions on this. John Swinney is of a certain age. Again, this is another thing that makes him so so alien to everyone. He would have went to schools back then. They would have had boys and girls entrances. He would have been lining up at different entrances. And now, fast forward to today, and he's saying, oh, well, actually, there can be multiple genders, and people can switch sex, and you should change whatever you want to change. Honestly, just grow up, John.
In those circumstances. Can I come to Andrew Leonard? Andrew.
Right, I think that's enough. I think that is enough, ladies and gentlemen. I'm finally done. And we're going to read the paper, and we're going to talk about how just cretinous they are. And we'll talk. I mean, Thomas Ingram, they are space where people can ask questions and express their opinion. Thomas, the same thing happens with all these spaces. And you have been there, Thomas. We've been through this, right? Every time I get involved in spaces, you get people direct messaging you, try to influence you in the background. I don't deal with that at all. I feel it's better for me just to extract myself from the situation, because I didn't want anybody to try to pull my strings or try to attach strings to me. And I keep going back to this story, right? But it's funny. It is truly, truly funny. I've been involved in so many protests in Scotland, so many at this point. I'm beginning to lose track of them all. But one of these protests, and I was in a group at the time, one of these daft wee Twitter groups, and I think I'm going to day my turn, and I'm going to say, this is what I'm going to say tomorrow. What do you think about my speech? You know what I mean? Just be a wee bit, giving them some inside track on what I'm going to say. And from that day, no one's ever known what I'm going to say prior to this, because what happened? What happened, Thomas? It's so funny. Somebody rewrote my speech and then sent it back to me. Can you believe that? I won't have any strings attached to me, Thomas. I might do a space, but I'm not getting involved. Honestly, I just hate it. Honestly, these Twitter groups as well, a lot of them have got vested interest, Thomas, like you know. They've all got their own agendas. I've got my own agenda. I'm just trying to promote best thing for Scotland. And I think at the moment, the best thing for Scotland's reform. And of course, Tories have got this, they've got a certain level of electability. But overall, the Tory brand's too tarnished. They're in terminal decline. They've had too much time to... They should have capitalised on the GRR stuff. Never did. They should have capitalised on everything else. Never did. In fact, they're happy enough just to sit there and do nothing again. Now, when we're approaching election season again, we're seeing all this stuff happening in the committee meetings and in the First Minister's questions. Again, we all see that during election period. This time until May next year. We don't see it any other time because they're so happy to do nothing. But every one of these groups they all try to espouse what I'm just telling you my truth, my thinking, my opinion, Thomas. And you're happy to join me on the show, Thomas. I'll have you up anytime you want. Give me a message and you can be on the show, Thomas. Because I actually respect you a lot. But because I know the only vested interest you've got, Thomas, is taking down Glasgow City Council because they're corrupt charlatans. And I agree with you there wholeheartedly. And I would join you in that endeavour. Amazing never mentioned trans men who are still a female. I mean, we lose sight. See, everything that John Swinney has said in that speech, everything that he said is null and void when it gets to the point when he says, are trans women women? And he says, yes. Null and void. may as well be talking into the void. And it's just incredible. It's so embarrassing. You know, I made a tweet the day. One word. One word. Let's get it up. My Twitter's actually bouncing. Embarrassing. Embarrassing. One word, ladies and gentlemen. 16,000 views. Impressions, whatever you want to call it. One word. One word.
And just for the sake of clarity, given all the debate about this that's going on at the moment, is it your position that trans women are women?
Well, I've said, you know, the answer I've given to that before is that that I accept that to be the case.
Embarrassing. It's so embarrassing to have John Swinney up there. It really is. You know, to think about all the amazing leaders that Scotland have had in the past, all the amazing people that have come out of Scotland, and this is the best we can do. Someone sculpted in politics. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think we're going to end there. I've got sufficiently angry enough. We're almost at the 500 viewers by the time we finished. Thank you all for joining me on the Niall Fraser Show. It might not have been the best show ever, but we can't always have hit shows. And I can't always be on top form. I am human after all. Thank you for all the amazing comments, Thomas. I might think about doing a space when I get time. What I will do before we go, I've still been doing a lot of work. I want to stay on this story, ladies and gentlemen. I want to stay on the story of the safe consumption room, right? I want to stay on it because there's something very, very wrong with the safe consumption room. So what we're going to do, we're going to watch, this is Colin McGowan. I used to work alongside Colin at Hamilton Accies before he sold the club. But what I worked with his charity. You know, his charity, I used to do the Easter fund days. You know, I didn't get paid a penny. I didn't know what I paid. But what his charity does, it's called Blameless for a reason, right? It's because his charity deals with the children that are in the shadow of addiction. And what does that even mean? You know, it's the children of addicts themselves. You know, drug addiction doesn't affect just the addict themselves. It affects their whole entire family, as we should know. And the children are blameless in this regard. So I've been working alongside, it just to sort of to shine a light on this consumption room. But then I've been investigating other areas of Glasgow, and the needles they're nowhere near as bad as what I'm calling ground zero. That's right next to the safe consumption room. That's ground zero, right? But there's so many other areas in Glasgow, and for the life of me, something needs to be done about the insane level of discarded needles there are here in Scotland. It's absolutely insane. And if you don't see needles on a daily basis and you live in the central belt, I think you're in the minority. I think a lot of people are walking past needles every day. They're walking their dogs and they're walking past needles every day. They're where their children are playing, there are discarded needles. And it needs to be fixed. It needs to be fixed. And it needs to be fixed quick. So we'll finish with this. I'll show this video. Because again, even when I bring it up, I'm getting accused of misinformation and disinformation, which is just, it's unbelievable.
Back down at the Morrison's car park, which is, as I said last week, was 100 yards away from the Thistle safer consumption rooms. What's in this box, I can assure you, is not misinformation. It's needles. It's a lot of needles. It's a lot of dirty needles, a lot of contaminated needles. and I picked him up. We done a wee film of it. I think it took me 2 minutes to pick up whatever 30 or 40, whatever it is. I'm going to get around, and you can see the Orion medical supply stuff. So there's no doubt in my mind whatsoever that the source of the needles is from the Thistle consumption, safe consumption room. Now, I hope with all my heart, I prayed last night that works for addicts. This isn't anything about that at all. We're missing the bigger picture. I hoped and prayed that some people get recovery, there'll be rapid recovery with the use of that centre. I have my doubts. I'm not sure if it's a £7 million worth of expenditure plus the capital build. I'm not convinced, but I certainly hope and pray it does. But I'm saying to John Swinney in particular, right, somebody come down and done a good job of cleaning the car park. Well done. I don't know who it does, but why clean the car park and leave the needles? I'll say it again. Children are down here. People are down here with their pets. The people of Carlton deserve better. I know I got a wee bit angry and a wee bit maybe emotional last week. I'm not doing it. I'm just asking Mr. Swinney, can you please look at the drugs that's happening? It's so disgusting. And I'm hoping that when I get out to the safe consumption room 100 yards away, that I hand them in and ask them to dispose of it. And if they take the needles off me, I'll thank them. And I'll do another wee bit at the end. And if they don't take the needles from me, I'll also do a wee bit at the end. So I'm going to get around there now. I'm absolutely delighted to say that the Thistle safer consumption rooms took the needles in. They're going to get them incinerated. Had a good talk with Eddie and some of the group in there. They really believe in the project, and like myself, they're praying that people get help. And like myself, I couldn't name any of them, but they're also appalled at the situation with needles across the city. So we're on the same page. I understand that there's an awful lot of recovery hubs that they can't comment because it's government funding, but I don't get any government funding, so I can comment. There's going to be a call to action. There's going to be a good call to action very, very soon, because we're going to have to work together to get these streets cleaned up. This is our city. This is Glasgow. We want to be proud of this, the people of Carlton. Mr. Swinney, there's no any false information or any misinformation. Come down to your constituencies. Come down and meet the voters. You've got a big vote next year. What's your chances here if you're going to leave your city like this? You are responsible, Mr. Swinney. Let's all work together. If you can't do the job, stand down and let somebody else and then do it. Right? I don't want anybody to lose their job, but see, if I've got somebody that can't do their job and I'm not doing it right, you replace them. So you decide, can you do the job, yes or no? But let's all work together and try to make Glasgow something we can be proud of.
So that's Colin. And this is honestly, the needle situation it's a huge public emergency. We can't have our back alleys, our wee nooks and crannies next to train stations, the bushes near this consumption room. We can't have them flooded with needles. We can't have addicts going in every single day. There needs to be something done, and something done really quickly about it. And you mentioned a call to action here. We're working on something. We're going to drop what I think's an explosive story on the needle situation and the impact it's having on businesses and institutions. It's heartbreaking, but that's coming soon, and I'm not going to spoil it, but that's coming soon. But thank you very much for watching the Niall Fraser Show. Cheers for tuning in. Over 500 days. God bless you all. I'm Glenn Jackson. Amazing show as ever. I didn't think I was on that great form, if I'm honest. I'm just so angry at John Swinney. I'm so embarrassed on his behalf. I feel like I'm getting a beamer here. Right, so there's only one thing left today, ladies and gentlemen, and that is to play the outro music. I'll see you again on Friday, and by then, I think I'll be able to drop the story. So tune in on Friday. When I drop the story, we're going to go right into it. But good evening for me, ladies and gentlemen, and I hope you have a great Thursday morning.